All right, everybody. Thanks to everyone for joining our webinar this morning or this afternoon if you're on the East Coast. We're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm Nick Clift. I help lead our client solutions organization at Alloy. And so before we get started here, I wanted to just share a couple of housekeeping items. So number one, during the course of this webinar, you're all muted right now, but we absolutely encourage you to ask questions. You can do that using the Q&A feature that you'll see there in Zoom. And our team that's logged on will either respond to those questions as they come, or we'll try to get to as many questions as we can as we go through this conversation. I'll also just point out here that if you do have comments, you should be able to find that Q&A button there. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So obviously, we are so grateful today to be joined by Dave Henderson, the Chief Commercial Officer at Melissa & Doug. Dave happens to be somebody I've had the pleasure of working with for the past couple of years, and it's really a pleasure to be able to have this conversation with you this morning, Dave. Dave has more than 20 years of experience in brand leadership, particularly in the toy and consumer product space. He joined Melissa & Doug in early 2020 after serving as Senior Vice President for Consumer Products and Licensing at Hasbro and as President and General Manager for Global Baby Gear at Newell Brands. Dave, I would love if you don't mind getting started by just telling us a little bit more about Melissa & Doug and your background there.
Hey, Nick, thanks, man. Appreciate the nice intro. Always a little worried so we don't pick on each other too much, right? But yeah, no, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I think I have the great fortune. It's been almost 2 years, and I know some of the team on the call from Melissa & Doug would say probably, Dave, it seems a little longer than 2 years, but to help steward this brand into the next part of its journey. I mean, it's been a company that's been growing for over 30 years, and obviously initiated and founded by Melissa and Doug Bernstein, who set up this brand and set up this great, powerful company, and it's fantastic. As most of you know, we're a top 15 global toy manufacturer, sold in over 100 countries, whether it be direct or through our distributor partners. Absolutely fantastic, and that privilege to shepherd this brand along is something we take very seriously. I think at our core, we're a purpose-driven brand. We encourage children to see the extraordinary in the ordinary and have that premium, high quality, trusted, and always 100% screen-free. We want that open-ended play for every child anywhere in the world to be able to play and experience with our products. We have the privilege of being that leading preschool brand, #1 in preschool for wooden toys, core categories. Many of you know, pretend play, puzzles, arts and crafts, activities and outdoors. We play in a lot of those core categories. We've established our licensing partnerships many years ago with Disney, but most recently, as you saw in 2021, with our friends and partners at Viacom with Paw Patrol and Blue's Clues and You. Lastly, and I would say something that stays true to who we are as a brand and a company and as the associates of this company, we've initiated Project Restore, where we can simply say and factually say we are leading the industry in sustainability. We're the #1 preschool toy brand for sustainable products. We plant a toy. See, Nick, they'll go off script already. We plant a tree for every tree we use. We are carbon neutral in our operations. That was completed at the end of 21, and we've accelerated our goal to FSC on 100% of our paper and more than half of our wood products sold by 2025. New PR release came out actually this morning, just in time for this, Nick, just showing how we're accelerating the importance of the sustainability initiative at our company, but also with FSC and how we go forward and expand our brand around the world. So very fortunate to be here with you and also to shepherd this brand to the next part of its journey.
That's terrific, Dave. Thank you for that introduction. And I'll just say here before we dive in, like I said, most of this is going to be questions for Dave, just hearing from Dave. But did want to, for those who are just kind of getting familiar with Alloy, share the 30-second introduction to what we're all about. We are the tailor-made tool for brands that provides connected planning and execution. That's what it boils down to. And so if you think about it, what Alloy is doing is, first and foremost, we're clarifying that demand signal, whether it's from retail partners, your own e-commerce, it's direct to consumer or direct to other businesses, whatever that looks like, we're clarifying that demand signal. And then we're giving you a suite of tools to either make better demand plans, make better supply plans, make better allocation decisions, and put all of that in a cloud-based platform that makes it that much easier for stakeholders, whether it's on your sales team, your marketing team, your supply planning teams, allow all those folks to interact with that demand, clarified demand signal in one location. All right. So hopefully, we absolutely encourage questions like we said in the Q&A, but Dave, I would love to just start by asking you, I mean, you joined Melissa and Doug, like you said, in 2020, which is an interesting time I think, for probably everybody on this call. Even before we kind of dive into more specifics, do you mind just sharing with us as a new, as in 2020, a new executive coming into Melissa and Doug, what were some of the top things on your agenda?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question, Nick. Yeah, joining in May 2020 was quite the timing. One for a person that had always been working in the office, whether it be at a great company like Hasbro or when I was at Newell, or even back in Canada in my day. And then all of a sudden to be joining a company at that moment in time, but do it virtually. So something we all take for granted right now, being on the screen, that was something that we all had to learn very quickly. So onboarding it worked out flawlessly. Credit to the entire team at Melissa and Doug for pivoting so quickly. But as I took a step back, engaged with the team, obviously Fernando Merce and myself and the executive team looked at what does the business need. But you had to sift through, Nick, and understand what was COVID impact versus what was going on with your brand. And you had to continually, and we do it today, separate the two. There's artificial, signals that are coming out of COVID trends, or how the consumer is behaving. How do you ensure that you understand the difference between what are some of those versus what is the true health of your brand and your business? But I would say, as I looked at it, the first and foremost objective was to kind of craft our global commercial strategy. And as I said in the upfront slide, this company had been growing for almost 30 years, right? And doing very well, but it had grown in a way out of, call it literally out of the back of Melissa and Doug's station wagon. And the way they had gone to market, which worked for many, many years, couldn't work in the future. So we had to very quickly pivot and say, what is our global commercial strategy? One of the first and foremost things we had to look at was we need insights and analytics. And that's, peeling back those layers of the onion. You and I said this many times, like every time you peel back that layer of the onion, you want to cry a little bit more. but at the same time, we had to initiate something and look and say, how is data going to ground our decision making? And what are some of the first things? So it took took a couple of months to say, all right, how do we set this up? Looked at it and moved very quickly from there. And luckily we had momentum in our business. So that empowers you to act more quickly, but initiating the insights and analytics team, and then starting to ground and partner with you. Now, Nick, Alloy had been with Melissa and Doug for a short time before, but it had only been used by a very few people within the org, and it wasn't on board. So now it's like, how do we make sure people are onboarding the information and they're doing so with kind of a structure and a framework? What are we going to look at? And then empowering them to do things. So I'll walk through just a few of the starting agenda, as I said, is crafting that strategy, that global commercial strategy. But we had to ground ourselves in what our business priorities were. Where did we want to grow? How did we want to grow there? And the data had to be at that root and that foundation of it. We engaged very quickly all of our global retail partners and listened intently. We did consumer research. And again, this is a company that never had a marketing team. So we onboarded, and Bridget Miller is our chief marketing officer and chief sustainability officer. She and the team literally built from nothing in the past and started doing consumer research. We started speaking with our retailers and listening first. I would say that's the absolute critical thing, Nick, is listening to what the consumer and our retail partners were saying about our brand and our business and what did we need. We had assumptions going in, right? Backed up with data, and we had to listen at the same time. And then ultimately we started to act on that, and we acted very quickly as it came into that mid-year and started to drive our brand in a different direction.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, Dave. I think you touched on a little bit this notion of, hey, when I joined Melissa and Doug already had Alloy, at least for a couple months, but it wasn't widely used. And I remember one of our first conversations, Dave, I mean, you talked about the importance of data, but it felt like it was also about building a genuine culture within the organization around, hey, we use the data, we use it in value driving ways. Can you talk to us just a little bit about how do you think about the importance of data culturally within Melissa and Doug, and why do you view that as important if you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember those first few meetings. We had a good time talking about, where Alloy was, what are the suites of opportunities you guys could offer us. Really, what it was, and this is where I had the privilege of being in the toy business for 20 years with some great people and great teams at Hasbro. And it's a balance in the toy industry, as probably many of the audience can attest. There's a science to it in terms of those numbers that you need, but there's also an art. Sometimes when those kids decide on that trend, it doesn't matter what all the numbers say. There is a trend. So there's the balance of art and science. So you have to know that going in, and that's where it's building that as a culture. If you said we are going to do everything just based on the data, in my in my experience in that entertainment and that toy space, that's a risk. That's a big risk. So you have to be cognizant and you have to balance that. So you have to take the experience and the knowledge, some of those trends. Some of them are predictive. Now we had the fortune, Nick, and I remember talking about this. Melissa and Doug is an evergreen property, right? It's not, we're not counting on the next movie or the next piece of content about a new character, introducing a new character or a new storyline. That's not who we are. But great quality toys and great quality product that allows it year in, year out. I mean, some of our top items, the dust sweep and mop, the ice cream play set, they've been out for years, but it's ensuring some of the basics. So the data can tell us some of those, but it's amazing when you start peeling that back. So that was the first one, is to balance the art and the science. The second one was to ensure that with the associates and with the entire team was making the best decisions must be based on data, on facts, rather than perceptions. That's tough. Well, here's the way we've always done it before. This is what's worked. And it's like, well, Nick and Dave's toy store, they've always done it this way. Okay, nobody's questioning that. It got you to a certain point, but you have to base all those decisions on that fact. Then you can overlay the art and you start to look at it that way. It also, you have to demonstrate to all of your partners an understanding. That's internal and external partners. So when you're speaking with a Walmart or an Amazon or a Learning Express or any retailer, like Kohl's, you name it, or global retail partners, Argos, whoever, you have to be able to demonstrate to them that you have an understanding of the data. Here's what's being said. Doesn't mean you can't ask. You want to ask questions. You want to understand what they're seeing, how they're looking at it, what other trends are they seeing. But you have to demonstrate that internally and externally. That data is going to ground you, that you're there with a strategy based on something. So I would say, as a culture, that was absolutely key, is those three factors. But I go back to the insights and analytics team to raise the prominence and the importance of the data and of the insights, was putting that in place. Roxanne O'Hara leads this for us, and two of her team members, Brian Barrett and Ryan Wesley. Absolutely, the three of them are absolute rock stars. And what they do is they're trusted voices within the organization. And so they help elevate the data as well. And they'll look through, they don't profess that they absolutely know everything, but here's what the data is saying. They have experience with Melissa and Doug, and they also have experience outside the industry. So they bring that all together. So I think that's absolutely imperative, is instilling it in the culture, understanding who you are as a company first, because I mean, not everybody is a toy company, right? Or an entertainment based. So understand where you are, make those best decisions on the data, instill that with everybody, and demonstrate to everybody that internally and externally that no, your decisions are based on that. Because if you bring in that data, Nick, and then you make the next 10 decisions that are contrary to the data,
right?
Well, then it's just, why are we using that? Well, it looks really good. I mean, it's a great dashboard. Well, no, you have to use the information.
Right. So I mean, Dave, if you're thinking about folks on this call who maybe they have Alloy today and they want to drive more value from it, or they're thinking about getting Alloy, I mean, do you have any advice for folks as they think about, hey, I want my team to not just have a tool that sits on the shelf, but I want them to get value from it? I mean, do you have any advice for executives who are trying to think through that?
Just working with you, Nick. I mean, that's the absolute key, right? No, I mean, like from a working with Alloy, when you have that data, you have to make sure it's in every part of your organization. Everybody has to have access to it. I would say that's, and you and I work, remember, on the onboarding of everybody. And so we continually look and then support the team members who are there and who aren't there. Like now, we don't have every account up on Alloy right now. We have some of our top partners, but we're looking to onboard more so we can understand more about their business and how our brand and our items interact with them. But I would say it's important to get the system up and running quickly, ensure the data is accurate. Now, 9 times out of 10, and Nick, you will articulate far better than I, you are downloading directly out of those retailer systems on our behalf, right? The data is accurate. Now then, how you pivot that and put it into your language. That's absolutely key. You must make sure that you understand that that data is accurate. It's coming from the right source. It's coming out of the right, whether it's a pivot table, whatever. You've got to make sure. But I would say the most important is onboarding and giving access to all the right people in the organization.
Yeah.
If they're not onboarding, if they're not using it and helping making it better and using that information, if it's only used by 2 or 3 people or just this team, then it's not going to be beneficial.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dave. And I see we've got a few questions kind of in that vein coming in. So we can circle back and keep talking about that a little bit more later on. Before we get there, I wanted to ask too, could you share a little bit more around the reasons Melissa and Doug pursued a data intelligence platform for your business? If you had a sense for, hey, these are the outcomes we want to drive from this.
Yeah, absolutely. The 4 priorities that we put to it, Nick, laddered up to our global commercial strategy. I'll articulate that in a second in broad strokes, because if there's any toy competitors, I'm not going to give you every insights into how we're winning. But obviously, built behind a great team. If I looked at it, we needed one voice of truth, one global view, and that's what Nick, what you and the Alloy team were able to bring together for us. Pulling a report out of Retail Link with Walmart, or pulling it out of Amazon systems, or pulling out of Smith's and working with them in partnership. Okay, well, they sometimes talk in different dollar exchanges. Sometimes some of them talk in units, some of them talk in dollars. They all have different metrics. So you had to bring that together. So we needed one voice of truth. That was absolutely imperative, and it needed to be global. I mean, Nick, I think we're 12 to 15 partners right now, I think, onboarded, correct? Globally.
I think you're closer to 20 something, Dave.
I'm closer to 20.
You've got quite a few.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah, you see, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, and I guarantee you Roxanne's probably yelling at me through the screen right now. But call it upwards of 20 global partners. You need the right partners on there to understand your business, right? So yes, you might want some aspirational ones when you want to do business, but if you're only selling a few things in there, it's not going to tell you. So where do you have your heart of your business? And also look across channels. So the pure play online, the omni-channel players, the independents, the mid-tiers, doesn't matter. You've got to make sure you've got your best partners, because the consumer is interacting with your brand in different ways. So you have to have that global view. I also look at it, you have to have a focus. You need these facts to drive profitable growth. That's the way we looked at it for both Melissa and Doug and our retail partners. That's why we're bringing on this data tool, so that what we're building is a business plan based on facts and their data. That's probably one of the most important factors in our conversation today, Nick, is that all of the data that we have, I can go and have a conversation with any one of the team members, from an associate right up to the chief merchandising officer and one of our retailers globally. It's their data.
Yeah,
we're not manipulating and saying, well, I shipped you this day and this week and that. No, it's like I can split it by their week,
right?
Split it by the day. It doesn't matter, and that's imperative. We've got to be able to do that. When I look at the next one, it's understanding, and what you're looking for is core trends, and whether it be, we were looking at trends of in-stocks, pricing, new launches. So identify those priorities up front, right? So some of the basics, you want to know what you're sold, but that's only going to tell you a certain amount. So we understood, and that's where you get the team onboarded and inputting into what you look for. We looked at it as what were some of the core trends that we wanted to see in our core business, right? What were our in-stocks like? What was our pricing going on in the marketplace? Retail pricing. What was the activity? When were they going up? We can look by day, right? And create those graphs to understand what's going on with the average retail price of different retailers, to understand the dynamic in a very dynamic marketplace. We looked for new launches. We wanted to know, and I remember you and I were sitting and talking about it. I wanted to know how Paw Patrol launched. I wanted to know how Blue's Clues. So I could look at Stephanie and Dion and then convey, here's the power of our brand. Full transparency. This is what's going on at retail, right? And give that. And lastly, I would say, and again, most importantly, empower the team. It's great if I have a dashboard. It's great if Fernando had a dashboard, right? Bridget, it doesn't matter. The account leads, yes, they need those dashboards. But anybody that's talking to account and anybody involved in the business needs to be empowered. They need to have that data so that when they're interacting, so when our team that's working on demand planning or ops and supply chain want to have a conversation with their peers at one of the accounts, they have the same data. Right. Versus I pull mine down in this Excel file and I translate it over here. No, one source of truth. So that's the most important, is empower the team and enable that team. Those were the kind of the 4 imperatives. Nick, did I miss anything?
I think you nailed it, Dave. I appreciate the answer. And building off that, you mentioned um, some of the priorities around, hey, when I go to a retail partner, I need to be able to speak their language, and I need to be able to have a conversation in how they look at their own business. I actually want to go to a polling question here
Sure.
for our participants. Our question is, how often do your customers make plan adjustments based on recommendations provided by your team? So you should see that poll question pop up for you. We'll take just a few minutes to respond to that, and then we'll take a look at how participants responded.
Great. Well, that's an easy one, Nick.
Well, Dave, what would be your answer?
To me, all the time,
Yeah,
but with a little bit of a caveat,
yeah,
we might bring them the data or the insight, but by asking the questions, not just saying, hey, here's what it says, you need to order, 50 more of this, or advertise in a different way. Well, no, it's actually listening, because they're looking at the same data. They might provide us insight. So it's asking them. So it's all the time.
mm,
They're willing to make the adjustment, but maybe it's on some of the feedback, but it's us asking that question with that data that kind of pushes that change. So to
yeah,
me, they're always willing to make adjustments.
yeah. No, all right. So I think we've got the cheat
For the
sheet.
results,
We've got the
drum roll.
results. Awesome. So yeah, we've got, most of the time or sometimes seem to be the most common
Mhm.
answer. Dave, are you surprised by that
No,
response?
I'm not surprised by that. Again, I think if you got to build trust over a period of time too. If you bring data or you ask them to do something different every time, any retailer, Nick and Dave's Toy Store will tune you out just as, an Amazon would tune you out if you ask for something. So, I think it's absolutely fair. And I can imagine, with the attendees, it cuts across many different parts, many different organizations and industries too.
Mhm. Well, Dave, you mentioned here, we talked a little bit about obviously this notion of, hey, it's great when I can get retailers to hopefully adjust up their sales planning. Um, I would love to just talk a little bit about outcomes from Alloy, Dave. And so you talked a little bit about, hey, we had these 4 core objectives, and we were using this analytic solution. Um, how is Melissa and Doug doing against those objectives? Are there some examples that would be helpful for our participants today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And specific examples, I can see, a few people have asked that. And also,
Mm,
let's make sure that we go back on some of the change management that we had to put in
mm,
place. I see that's come up a couple of times. But yeah, I would say that a couple of specific examples. We wanted to talk about what were some of the core trends, the in-stocks, pricing, new launches. I mentioned new launches. That was absolutely key for us.
okay.
So this was the first time, and I'll use that as a specific example. Nick, you and the team helped Brian and Ryan create a dashboard, a Viacom dashboard for us
Yeah.
to understand every key item in both licenses. We could see every retailer that had them listed in store or online. And then what we understood is we could overlay what our goals were. So here
Mhm.
were our objectives against that. And then we could track that each day in some cases, but each week, and monitor that, have the conversations with our partners at Viacom. So the specific example was saying success for us, a part of success for us in fall of 21 was to flawlessly launch our Viacom products, new to market, set green with all the retailers for modulars or planograms, but also make sure that we're supporting ads and promotions and programs in line with what Viacom was doing, right? Whether it be the Paw Patrol movie or new media and plans behind Blue Scoot's new.
Mhm.
So we could ladder all of that up. We created one dashboard with you. And what we were able to showcase is what were the items that were at or above plan and
Mm,
why. And then we understood what were the items that weren't. And so specific examples, I mean, look, not every item worked in both properties, but what we found out very quickly is we could read that trend, knew it based on factual data where it was and whether it be a Target or anybody else, and then take action.
mm,
Now, most importantly, you don't do it on 1 week of data. So, that Nick, you and I were looking at as we kind of prep for this, the importance of data is to let it on board for a little while, let it
mm,
kind of come into the system. Now, there's no magic science, not after 2 weeks or 2 days or anything like that. You've got to be comfortable with the amount of time you're going to give it to be successful. That all the investments that you've made from marketing, from operations, that it's set properly in all the
yeah.
stores. Let it breathe.
Yeah.
And then what does success look like? So that dashboard, that Viacom dashboard, was one specific example. Another one, our core objective at a couple of our mass players was to ensure we had in stock
Mm,
well above the retailer's metrics. Now, last year was very dynamic. I think you and I, everybody on the call could agree. But we put what we felt was an in-stock percentage that we felt that we had to hit.
Yeah.
Now, wasn't perfect, but we knew at one of our major retailers in the United States that for years we weren't in stock anywhere above a 70%. Just being very transparent.
Yeah.
Well, that's horrible. That's multi-millions of dollars of sales you're missing. So then what we had to understand is what were those items? And that's where the team took the data from Alloy, sat down and said, okay, what are our forecasts against those items? How are we going to ensure that we're in stock? Monitor the POS over a week, know the number of stores, whether it was being sold online or in store. And so those two specific ones, the Viacom launch, as well as then in stock at one of our major US retailers, allowed us to meet and exceed our plans with Viacom, and then exceed our results with this in stock on some of our core properties, core items. And again, those were two very specific ones. But what it allowed, I mean, Nick, you were part of it. The insights and analytics team with that retail team, or with the brand team in partnership on the Viacom ones, said, what are the metrics we want to look at? What were the items? What were all those things that what determines success, not just how many you sold? Put that in the dashboard, and every week, right, or weekend, because I know you were doing it on the weekends as well, inputting and making sure the data was uploaded. So to me, those were some of the two specific examples that showed success. But there was a multitude of others, Nick. I mean, look, we remember when we were looking, we talked about in-stocks, we talked about Paw Patrol and Blue's Clues. When we talked about, Black Friday, Cyber Week, right? And, and what our metrics were. We had dashboards, and Roxanne and the team were sending those out sometimes on every couple of hours, and you were downloading the information. But we knew with you, and full credit to you and the Alloy team, we knew if Amazon or somebody was having a problem downloading information quickly. And that's one of the other things to think of, is try and plan what happens if you don't have all the data. And you guys were able, a great partner, allowed us to ensure and to know that we had the data, and if we didn't, you were able to give us an update. So it was another example.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Dave. I think I actually want to go to a participant question here that I think is really relevant to what you're talking about. So we got a question that says, typically, how deep of a data level does your team look at? Is it SKU, customer location, or a higher aggregate level on the SKU distribution wide? And which level is most valuable in driving business insight and buy-in?
Yeah, the answer would be yes. But look, depending on the situation, you have to look broad scope. If you're looking for a broad strategy or an insight to bring back, you start up here. You start at that broader scope, and then you prove it with all the detail. But if you're looking for something very specific to either your retailer or to your item, to your subsegment or your brand, to that buyer, you have to build that, right? And I think that was that's where I can say yes, Nick. It's like how you take that data and utilize it to bring that back. We look at it from macro. We have an executive dashboard, both on a daily and a weekly basis, but even to like our Amazon team has created their own specific Amazon dashboard that speaks in their language. And when I say their language, it has ours in terms of how we look at our invoice shipments, our ordering, all those sort of things in our world. But it also then looks in PCOGs and all the differences with Amazon, right? So they have to have that. So they've created something very unique. So that's why I said, yes, it depends on the question you're trying to answer, right? Of level of detail, it has it. I mean, Nick, another one, specific example in a few of our dashboards and our reports. With I can drill in to how we're doing state by state, or something true to my heart, province by province, right? And understand how our brand is with a certain retailer in certain parts of the country. That's important because there's different trends going on. Where's the bulk of your business in some of the larger states? Well, if you're down 20% in there, then all of a sudden I can drill through, and this is the specific one, I can drill through, let's say, into California. Understand why, let's say, our brand is up 10%. Well, what's driving that? Oh, maybe I was in stocks. Maybe one of the major retailers has a greater presence there. So understanding what's driving that. Whereas maybe one of our other states, I'm down 10%. Well, what's driving that? And then you build those actions versus the macro insight. Hopefully that answers the question.
I appreciate that, Dave. I think if we, part of what I, from my standpoint, see as a powerful unlock for the value that you've realized, Dave, is you've driven a ton of adoption. And I see a lot of these questions coming in around, hey, what is the change management process? How do you really support driving adoption? I'd love to hear your thoughts there, Dave, just about what has been successful in terms of driving user adoption. I think I'll just point out, I think you've got 35, 40 weekly active users, at least in Melissa and Doug and Alloy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those are active. And I know, and Fernando always wants me to mention that he is usually number one in terms of those active users as our CEO.
Right?
It's usually our competition. No, we do. And you know what, we're building more. I remember we have our China operations, our international operations as well. I think if I go through them, the adoption process to this, Nick, one, obviously our great partnership, you have to showcase to the team and demonstrate to the broader team, this is the source of truth. This is where we're going. Now, you can't just tell them that. They have to be, everybody had to be part of that. What are the things that we need to look at? I used the Amazon example. They need to be able to customize it. So our sales analysts can customize their information to what they need, whether it's a macro weekly review or whether it be a daily or just a situational review. They need to be a part of that. It also needs to cut across every part of the organization. So it can't just be within sales. So it has to be, marketing has to take hold, operations has to look at it, the executive team, but it also demonstrating from the executive level, we use that. I mean, I report on POS pretty much every day, right? So here are the things we're seeing, but on a regular weekly basis in our executive meetings, in our sales meeting, we're all speaking from the same source. Now, it's up to the sales leads and the sales analysts and the national account manager, as well as the marketing team, to provide additional insights. Oh, they've dug through the data. Here's something else it sees. But that way, we're all talking the same. We report on a regular basis. So what was happening before, everybody could question the data, right? Because, I got it from this file and I got it from this file, or I pulled it directly from this retailer. It's like, no, one source. Now, if I could take a pause though, Nick, I think that this is where we are in a journey. We had, I'm going to say I'll say tongue in cheek, the privilege of really not having one source of truth prior to me joining, right? You were, the Alloy team was there, but it was only being used by a couple of people within the org, right? But what was happening is data wasn't driving the decision-making of the company. Now, doesn't make it wrong, but where we were on that journey needed to start to flip that. So we've almost been able to start from green, from day one. And have that instilled as the DNA of your company. But there's many companies, in different industries that are on the call today that they're at different parts. They might be, they've had multiple different data sources. They use different systems, different software. So how do you come to that? That's why it's important to cut across to all parts of the organization. Because if ops is using one source, sales is using another, executives is using another, how do you trust it? Because I can make the data spin if you need to. Right. But it's one source and it's continual. You need to make sure that every time you sit in a meeting, from a sales perspective, you're talking to this data. When you're sitting on an executive call, you're talking. When I sit with the board, right, we use this data, but it's also backed up, and we back it up with external data sources of NPD, right, Kantar and others. So it's imperative that you do that. That's part of the absolute onboarding that you do. You have to share those insights too, Nick. I think this is important because the only way you improve and you get better is you get input and feedback. We share those inputs, not just with the Amazons, the Targets, the Smiths of the world, or John Lewis. We actually share those with Learning Express or Astra. Just because we don't necessarily have all that data from them, we share the macro insights, never the confidential information. That's one thing. Let's make sure you and I both know we have the firewalls up to make sure that the data is encapsulated. But at the same time, there's macro trends. Well, if the consumer is behaving or reacting to our brand messaging in a certain way, you can translate some of those trends into other channels. Well, then you sit down with those channel experts, like a team at Learning Express. Here's what we're seeing in our business. What are you seeing? Hearing what those individual stores are seeing. Well, then you start to feel that, some of the trends are the same. How do you act on it? And that's important. So it's that constant feedback. As I said, every executive, you need to reaffirm and support. You never profess that it's 100% right all the time. But it's the one source of truth, and you continually, Nick, I know you and the team at Alloy do it. Verify the data, look at the history, making sure, like, now we're going 2 years back. Take the time to do it right, but you got to act quickly.
I want to ask, I appreciate that, Dave. I want to ask another polling question related to our conversation here. If your company uses an analytics solution for retail POS data, we're curious which groups are regular users of your solution. It'll be interesting to see the results there. I mean, Dave, I think you've been very deliberate about, to your point about it's not just driving adoption with your sales team or with others. It seems to be, hey, you've really reached out into the organization and pulled other people into this information. Can you talk a little bit about, is that important? Why do you think that's important, Dave?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the answers here. If he's online, he'll get a giggle out of this. But Lee Sucroft, our chief financial officer, he and I spar back and forth. Great guy. He's the one actually partnered with you initially, right, to bring Alloy in. And just an example with finance, we want finance to have awareness and visibility. Do they need to be in there every day? No. But you actually need. It's important at the beginning to get the input of what do all these other departments and parts of the business, we're all going to the same ultimate goal and objective. So if they don't have now an awareness and a visibility, but Lee has done, he and his team do a great job. We have a financial performance review on a monthly basis where we inform the broader organization. Here's how we're doing. We use the Alloy data to start off those conversations. Here's where POS is. It's there. So that then ties to our business metrics and our goals. So it's imperative that way across all the parts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dave. I don't know, Chichi, if we can see the results here. Yes, 93% sales e-commerce. That makes a lot of sense to me. It's interesting, Dave, you mentioned finance and, more like only a quarter of the folks today.
Yeah, I'm actually, and you know what, I'm and honestly surprised by it. I hope and I appreciate everybody's honesty. But if you look at the C-suite, that I'll say something that's scary. If it's 14 of 42, it's a third, Nick. That should be up as high as sales. Now, doesn't mean they're in the data every single day. They don't need, but if they don't have awareness and visibility, generally speaking, if you build a strategy, they're the ones kind of steering, that strategy for that mid to longer term. I sure would hope that's grounded. I mean, even if it's just a dashboard that they go into, and I joked earlier with Fernando, but he loves the data, he loves the insights, right? And so he's looking at it. I think that's imperative. So I'm a little surprised by that. And if I look at, whether it be merchandising, marketing, again, strong, but I think my point of view is it should be instilled across the organization. Do they need to use it every day? No, right? But you know what? I think there's room for improvement for all of us.
Yeah. And you've made this point, Dave, but you've got the ability right in the tool to say, hey, Fernando can have a view that's very macro, that's very aggregated up, whereas other teams have more of that deep dive. All right, we're getting a lot of questions from participants, so I do want to get to a few of those.
Yeah, sure.
Last really quick question though for you, Dave, is just a view of, hey, we've been partnered now for about 2 years. Where do you see the partnership between M&D and Alloy going, or where do you see kind of Melissa and Doug's relationship to this kind of data going?
Yeah, 100%. I would say two areas, and I applaud and see Chichi, you've helped coordinate this and being a partner with Nick. But just I had the fortune of joining you and a couple other people at Alloy and listening to on a consumer advisory board, Nick, that your customer advisory board, sorry. Some of your other partners and where they're working with you on the tool is very exciting. But I would say, and that kind of shone a light on me, two areas that we want better integration: demand planning and marketing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think from a demand planning, I see a couple of the comments in the chat. It's not there perfectly as an org, because that's where we ultimately have to get to. Now we have other tools that we work with, but taking the Alloy data, combining it with what we have, and also and continuing to partner with the team at Alloy, you can go end to end. And that's where I think the secret sauce and the win is when you know what the POS is doing. That's actually, call it the end result. How do you put it as part of your demand planning and your forecasting?
Right.
And that's where we started with Rebecca Wardlow and Jill Iannello, who's just recently joined us, rock stars in this space. Well, now how we're getting our forecasts aligned with our items, using the POS data to drive better planning. All of a sudden, we'll find those efficiencies and that profitable growth, not just for us, but and most important for our retail partners. Like if we have what they need when they want it, novel idea, you sell more. So I would say that's absolutely one that we do there. Those are the two main focuses for marketing, as I mentioned with Bridget and her team. I think it's imperative as Bridget invests dollars behind the brand in marketing, connecting with the consumers in all the right spaces, digitally, socially, TV, you name it, as we go forward. They have to be informed with the data. Now, it doesn't mean this is the only source of data. They will have different consumer information and insights, right? That will help inform and where to go and where to direct those dollars. But at the same time, I don't want them promoting to an empty shelf in store or online. That's a waste of money. And and all of us, in the industry can speak to that. So you've got to do it. I would say that the one, and you and I have talked about this, it's the predictive analytics would be my,
Yeah.
kind of, I'll call it my North Star,
Mhm.
right? We have the fortune of an evergreen brand and evergreen toys that, I'm not waiting for the next Yoda to come out or the next trend. I've got a core evergreen franchise with newness, quality products. I have a history. Well, Nick, that's where I want to start turning that into predictive analytics
Yeah.
quickly. And I know we're on the path there of saying, well, this means this, and here's how you start forecasting. And then imagine you then trust that data, you trust the forecasting trends of what it means, you put your forecast in the system, you have to worry less about forecasting for those items, you trust the analytics.
Right.
Then you can forecast on the new, then you can plan against some of the other things and you tackle those problems, and the data starts creating those efficiencies. To me, that's the next one. But when I say my North Star, that's very soon, Nick. It's not in the longer term. It has to be, right? So there's no question there. Hopefully that those two areas, I think, would be the absolute key focuses for me.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. All right, I'm going to jump here to a question that was submitted in advance from a participant, and I thought this was an interesting one. Question was, how important is it to react quickly to initial sales data versus waiting to confirm the data is the most accurate? And they said, what are the key components of the data intelligence platform that you find as must-haves?
Yeah, great question. I saw that. I think that's why I said at in the upfront, there's a balance, and I can only specifically state about this industry. I don't doubt it's for others, but within that toy and entertainment space, there's an art and a science to it. If you take one day of POS, you can't necessarily extrapolate that out because there could be so many factors. Is there a competitive retail? Is somebody price matching in the marketplace? Is the advertising going on? Is there a comparable like item that was impacted? So you have to have that brand and that category understanding. That's the art. The science, the data tells you something. So I would say in terms of the length of time, I wish I had that crystal ball, but I would give it at least a couple of weeks. The data is probably telling you something after a couple of days. And this is where my recommended next step would be, have your team look into it. They can, the teams need to look at that, extrapolate, bring that to you, but also, and most importantly, go to your retail partners. Ask them the question. Here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? Maybe there's something going on at the department level. Maybe there's something going on at the category level that you don't have visibility to. So I think that my suggestion would be you give it that week or two, right? But ask the questions only after a few days and have the teams dig in, but don't be going down too many rabbit holes.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, Dave. Another question here from a participant is, I think it's interesting. They say Melissa Doug's a large toy company. At what stage should a small business invest in data systems?
Well, we have the fortune of being, a top 10, top 15 global toy manufacturer. We're not as large as some. My advice to anybody, I have family members that own and operate their own business. You do it from day one. You have that data from day one. If you don't have that data, you're actually working blind. Honestly, and look, whether that starts in the demand planning area and your operational side, or whether it works with your retail partners, you have to. And if you don't have that from day one, especially now, with the items being sold in so many different ways, direct to consumer, whether it be your own website, whether it be omnichannel, whether it be 3P, whether it be in a brick and mortar store, but so many different iterations, different countries, you better have that right off the bat. So my advice would be right off the bat. The one, Nick, I want to go back, excuse me, if I could. In that first question, they asked, what are some of the key components of the data intelligence platform? And like the must-haves, I didn't answer that properly. I would say, and I'm going to say from the commercial side of the business, you need, I'll call it, you'd love the 80-20 rule. You'd love to be the macro retail partners that kind of give you the best possible insights. Data, to me, you need daily sales. If you can't get daily, you get weekly sales. You need units and dollars in retail dollars, right? Live in that retailer's world, right? If you put it at your invoice dollars, you can have that as a metrics, but that's not what you're reporting to them. The retail partner is not interested in that. They want to know, and not a stagnant MSRP, but an active retail,
Mhm.
right? Those are absolutely key. And I would say the last one, and Nick, you and I have gone back and forth, in stocks. In
Mhm.
stocks, in stocks, in stocks. Where are you? And that you must know that. So to me, those are the kind of the key components. Again, Roxanne and Brian and Ryan are probably yelling in the screen right now. You missed that. You missed this. You missed this. But we're happy to get that out to anybody after as well.
No, that's really helpful, Dave. Thank you for that. Let's see. And by the way, everybody keep the questions coming. We'll get to as many as we can in this conversation, and any that we can't get to, like we said, we'll chat with Dave and try to follow up where we can. Also, just point out, it works great to submit those to the chat. That's fine, but just note there's a separate button that also says Q&A. You're welcome to type those questions in either place. We'll make sure we keep track of them. Dave, let's ask, I think there was a question here just a minute ago, talking a little bit about how you think about optimizing your business regionally. The question was, has Alloy enabled M&D to supply more of their business domestically, given the readily available access to store level insights? If so, can you talk to how your team uses Alloy to optimize business regionally?
Yeah, I would say we're and Nick, you can articulate as well. So I'd ask you to jump in. We are at a good point of utilizing the regional and the state data or the province data, not at the absolute optimized point, but we do understand, we're starting to understand those trends. So we balance our business, like most companies in the toy space, between a domestic and a direct import basis, right? But the plans are based on that, on the data, right? So that DI, that can be planned at a certain level to support your in-stocks. But the domestic, and again, this is where we have the privilege of this brand, we are an evergreen franchise, right? So we can show them certain levels of carryover, absolutely fine, because that evergreen nature, you're not going to go hot and not in this space. But I would say domestically, the insights from, let's say, California, Florida, Texas, and Massachusetts, Rhode Island, right, can help provide those insights. And what it does unlock is maybe there's certain items, certain price points that are trending more. It also understands, and this is where the kind of the synergies and the partnerships with marketing we have to get better at, is to say, where are our consumers? Where are they connecting with our brand? We can start to understand that from other sources of data of where the predominant share of our consumers are, where are they buying, how are they buying that, in store or online, and then how do we plan domestically? As an example, we have our domestic inventory and our domestic warehouses. Having those insights has unlocked growth. Do I know every specific detail of that? No. And I know we're scratching the surface of what it could be, Nick.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Another participant question here. We've been talking quite a bit about kind of brick and mortar sales, and this one's really focused on e-commerce. They said they're interested in e-commerce related topics. Please share some very hands-on tactical advice around how you manage e-commerce sales, whether it's assortments or focusing on specific SKUs. Any insight from an e-com perspective?
Yeah, that was one of the early questions, Nick. That members said, "Don't give me generalities
Right.
and broad scope strategies." Okay, look, I know from an Amazon dashboard. Let's use Amazon as an example. Great partners of ours. The team at our team at Amazon, in partnership with the team in Seattle, is able to then drive down into our data. Right? It lines up with their data. So we have an Amazon dashboard, as I said earlier, that has all of our information the way we look at it, whether it be our invoice sales, et cetera, but it also allows the PCOGs, right? And there's so many layers to it. And the teams are able to take those specific bits of information, right? A lot of it confidential. What are the insights? What's driving the item? Whether it be an average price point, whether it be the promotion that's going on, day, whatever the case may be, whether it's a price matching situation or deal of the day. And then they can read that data, get back to Amazon really quickly, as an example, and do something about it, take an action, or just simply report on it. So there's specific ones with Amazon that they can do, but even when you look at the omni-channel players, we're understanding a digitally enabled purchase, or digitally initiated purchase, right? And what happens there on some of our bigger retailers, how it translates to stores. So the biggest trend, that we've all seen over the past couple of years with COVID is buy online, pick up in store. I don't want to walk into the store. I want to buy it online. Well, it's actually a massive unlock opportunity, and the data can start to tell you that. So we're now digging in to say, okay, buy it online, pick it up in store. Now there it goes back to the importance of in stocks. So if I have it tagged as available online, I want to go pick it up in my local ABC retailer, right? I need to know it's in stock. What's that data telling me? Where are they buying it from, et cetera? So there's specific examples. Again, we're still scratching the surface, but I would say the Amazon one is definitely one. We talked about the Viacom dashboard. The one I love the best, Nick, and you know this, daily POS tracking.
Yeah.
Right? Just understanding the daily inputs, we're starting to see trends. What does Monday mean to our POS? What does Tuesday? Then it goes back to how you then plan the business. So getting to that granular level of detail, right? I think is absolutely important.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
So hopefully that was just specific enough examples.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Well, chime in, folks, if you've got using the Q&A or the chat, if you've got follow-ups to that or other questions there. I want to go to one here that's kind of more COVID focused, Dave. Obviously, we talked a little bit about 2020, 21 being odd years in a lot of ways for everybody. This participant asks, COVID-related factory shutdowns over the past 18 months have impacted production capacity for some key core items. We're trying to catch up. For top items with wide distribution, how does Alloy assist M&D with allocation? And even Dave, I mean, I think folks would probably be interested just to hear, are you using Alloy and just managing through COVID and all these kind of, demand and supply disruptions more generally?
100%. And look, what the world has gone through over the past couple of years is just, it's unparalleled. But you look at COVID has an impact, but then all of the subsets of COVID, whether it be the supply chain issues, that you could say are pressurized because of that, but then the labor issues and all this sort of things, it's all an impact to our business. But that's where I'm saying Nick, it kind of goes back to the start of our call. Data has to ground you.
Yeah.
But then there's so many other factors. So has it helped? Absolutely. Right. There's no question that when we look at that, and when all of a sudden, if I see an item that the sales are trending way off, it's not automatically, oh, well, something's wrong with the item. Let's, marketing's not working or the price point's all wrong. Well, no, it actually just could be out of stock.
Right.
And out of stock, not because the retailer or ourselves planned it incorrectly. It's just, it might be delayed in the system. But then what's important, as everybody's in there and they're seeing it, I know my team gets me the information like as quickly as they see it to say, hey, this is out of stock. It's going to be out of stock for the next 14 plus days. Well, it's enabled some conversations with major global retailers for our team, whether it be Target, Walmart, whomever, that they are now in partnership with the operations team there and supply chain. They now have visibility much sooner than what it shows in their system of when it's available.
Right.
What are the stores that it need to be directed to? And they work together to say, okay, well, here's the next proper flow of those goods. Or when we get a weekly replenishment order, it's like, actually, hold on. Remember, this is built on this program and based on this insights. We've got to either adjust that up because it's not comping for out of stocks, or we got to adjust it down because the DI order is coming in at a later time than originally planned. So there's so many layers to it. And again, that's the art and the science. So there's, I would say it's impacted us. We've been very fortunate as our operations team, both in China and here domestically, have just done an outstanding job. I mean, the year-end MPD POS results, I mean, it's just our growth has been phenomenal. Full credit to the entire organization. Great product, great, purpose-driven brand, great teams, our great retail partners around the globe. We're seeing business momentum, but it's not. And this is where I remember right at the beginning, I said, you've got to be able to distill, and remember my first couple of days, Nick, what is COVID, right? Factors. What is your business health? And that's where the data has helped us understand where our true business is going, and then it's overlaid with here are the COVID factors. I'll share openly with people on the call. Our furniture during the heat on this, I call it that late spring when in 2020, and then early fall of 2020, when COVID was kind of peaking at different times, our children's furniture was doing very, very well. Okay, but then we look at it relative to the size of the category, relative to the growth of the category during those times versus normal times. And all of a sudden you get to see what a COVID factor was versus the true health of your business. And the true health of our business was up at a greater rate, but it would have, if you read only that data, right, and didn't understand the dynamics, we would have chased into things that we didn't need to chase into. So continue to ensure that it's profitable growth for our retail partners. So we're talking to retail partners, pure play, whether it be a Wayfair or anybody else, and talking, here's the trends that we're seeing. Here's what you chase. Here's what you don't chase. And again, it unlocks a different type of partnership.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Dave. We've got just a couple minutes left here. Maybe, I mean, Dave, anything, we had one question here, which is, do you have one piece of advice for companies who are looking to have the same retail success as Melissa and Doug? And maybe I just say more broadly, Dave, anything else that you want to make sure folks on the call here before we wrap up?
Yeah, I see the 5-minute warning, Chichi. Don't worry. Yeah, Nick, you and I are going to be kept in line. I would say, look, the one, it's easy for me to say, but I would say the one piece of advice, act boldly with data, right? Is trust in the data. If you've verified it and you have the teams looking at it and they are bringing you, or you are looking at it, you have to trust in that. If you've built it and you've onboarded it properly, you have to trust it, and then boldly act in that. But look, as I said in the upfront, we have a privilege of stewarding Melissa and Doug after 30 plus years of growth into its next part of its journey. But you can't do that without an absolutely fantastic team, and you have to entrust your team. These are fantastic individuals with 20 plus years of service at Melissa and Doug and more, to ones that have only been with us a couple of months, but they're all bringing their experience. So you have to entrust your team. As I said, you have to have continual innovation.
Yeah.
You have to then monitor that innovation and understand the success. I wish we were hitting, 1,000%, but we're not. But we're hitting a much greater rate of our new innovation and ensuring our core is in stock. And as I said, purpose-driven brand with Project Restore, I think is absolutely imperative of how if your brand is built on something, the consumer reacts to it, the data will then support. They want it. They are going to go find it, whether it be in store, online, at Nick's toy store, it doesn't matter. They're going to find it, but you have to be grounded and purposeful. So I have that privilege, and I love what I'm doing. I came back to the toy industry because I missed it. I missed the craziness, and I'm absolutely loving every minute of it.
Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. As we wrap up here, I'll just remind folks. So, if you've got additional questions, do send them our way. You can certainly, reach out to our team or post them in the Q&A here as we close. I'll just remind folks, so a recording of this is going to be shared with everybody who registered for this webinar. You can expect to receive that later this week. And Dave, thank you again for joining us. Thanks to all our participants for hopping on. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, everybody.